told me that writing was not a good career option, and he convinced me to join the Navy out of high school instead. So I was in the Navy for 6 years, emerged, but I couldn't get it off my mind. So when I had the opportunity at the end of my final assignment for the, I think that's when people tend to quit because they don't think that there's anybody involved. But when you have other writers and people giving you feedback, it starts to become more real and something that you can do because you see others doing it.
3 tips that would help them in trying to self-publish. Anything that you would share with them?
First and foremost, I would say not to so helpful because they help you to think of things differently than you might see, that you might not know something is a plot hole or that you had an emotional moment that you really missed that you could have capitalized on. And so I found that to be very valuable, but especially getting the.
Do you dream of adding your very own book to the collection of books that have already been written? Do you wonder where to start or how to finish? Does the idea of writing a book seem too overwhelming? Do you just want to polish up those writing skills or stay motivated? Do you wonder what to write about? Everything you need to help you write, stay motivated, and self-publish your own book is right here on one channel. And why? Well, because it's time to get over the writer's hump and just do it. You can write anything. Yep, you can write a book.
Hello and welcome to A Book. Today we have another great episode for you. We have a fantastic author for you to hear from. But before we get to her, I would like to ask you to please subscribe to this channel. And I just want to encourage you that what we do here is we remind people that anybody can write a book. And I want to encourage you to know that you can write a book as well. So we have a fantastic guest for you today. Her name is Christina Wallace, and she has written some books that I know you are going to be interested in. So Christina, welcome to today's show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so thrilled you're here. We scheduled your show quite a few weeks ago, and we had a great conversation before we scheduled you, and I've been thinking about you ever since. So I'm so glad that you are here today to talk about your books and the writing process. I know that our audience would love to hear a little bit about you and, kind of how you got started writing. So would you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, so I have been writing for a long time. I was kind of someone that faded into the background in high school, but if anybody knew anything about me, it was that I was a writer. So when they wanted to translate a book in French class into English as a movie script, like Christina will do it. Like when we did Oedipus, they wanted to do it in 1920s mafia version, like Christina will do it. So everybody knew that I would write. But my dad was more of a realist, and he told me that writing was not a good career option. And he convinced me to join the Navy out of high school instead. So I was in the Navy for 6 years, active duty. I went to the Philippines and where I met my husband, and then I was in Afghanistan. But all during that time, I was still writing on what I called
Before you go any further, I just want to tell you thank you for your service.
yeah, it was fun. I worked in the intelligence field, so I got to be on the cushier side of things as far as being deployed. Um, but I was always writing on the side, and then once I left active duty, I discovered National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, and that was when writers from all around the world aimed to write a 50,000 word novel over the month of November. And
Wow.
that was my first time ever writing a book from start to finish because I had the terrible problem of always starting over going, oh, I can do better and just never finishing. And so from that point, I really tried to focus on writing novels from beginning to end. And I joined the Institute for Children's Literature in 2017, and that really helped me hone my skills for writing for a younger demographic. And having that one-on-one attention really helped me polish and refine what I was doing. But I was 35 years old when I got published, but I am a wife. I have two kids, a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old,
Wow.
and I enjoy playing video games and cake decorating. So it's busy, but writing is by
Oh,
far my passion.
oh my goodness. You mentioned cake decorating and my ears perked up. So I used to make wedding cakes and cupcakes and stuff for a living. I love cake decorating. It's my zone out happy place.
Yeah,
I
it's a lot of fun. Because the kids are all young, so I get to do all the character cakes. So I've done Pokemon and Harry Potter and
oh wow.
unicorn tea party cakes and cookies, and so it's been fun kind of learning it on the fly and being able to make the thing that everybody oohs and ahs at the parties.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. One of my books that I wrote was called Cake Stories, and it's really just a collection of other people's pictures of cakes that they have made and little stories that go along with the cake. Like, I made this cake for my father for his 70th birthday or whatever. So
Hmm.
it's kind of a cool little book, a few recipes in there and things. But I love cakes, all things cakes. But we're not here to talk about cake. We're here to talk about your books. And I would like to know what was the inspiration for this particular story? First off, tell us the title of your books.
So The Lightkeeper is my debut novel. It's an upper middle grade urban fantasy book. The first book in a series. So its sequel, The Lightkeeper in the Other World, came out last November. I have 6 books planned for that series. Book 3 comes out this July. And then I also just published a young adult fantasy romance book called A Not So Simple Quest that I'm really excited about.
Oh my. Oh goodness. Wow. So what was the inspiration for the story?
So for the Lightkeeper, I was enrolled in the Institute for Children's Literature at the time, and I had a lot of assignments due, but I still wanted to participate in NaNoWriMo. And so I had the idea that instead of writing a full-length novel during November, I would write a collection of short stories. And to prepare for all these short stories, I had gone on Pinterest and searched for a lot of writing prompts. And one of those prompts was just 2 sentences that you find a locked box in your attic filled with glass balls. And when you break one, a man appears. And so from that, my mind went really wild. And I decided that it wasn't a man that appears, it's a fairy that appears. And
Oh
to
boy.
be released, they have to do 3 tasks for you if you call them by name. And so just this little short story of about 3,500 words emerged, but I couldn't get it off my mind. So when I had the opportunity at the end of my final assignment for the institute was to write the first 3 chapters of a novel, and I was like, well, let's try that one. And the more I wrote it, just the more my mind just started coming up with things. And by the time uh, I finished the 3rd chapter, I'm like, absolutely, I have to write this
You
book.
have to write
So
it. Yes, yeah. I think that's so how the writing process goes, isn't it? You start, I was talking with an author just yesterday, and we were talking about sometimes you start off on one path with your book, and then you realize, oh, wait, I don't think this is how this is meant to go. And you kind of shift gears or you get more ideas along the way. So that's really pretty awesome. I like that. I love that you talked about getting the writing is going over to Pinterest and getting that writing inspiration from there. Because I am somebody who is a big believer that you can get inspiration just from writing the title first. So I
mhm.
watched a program years ago where that's what this guy did is he wrote out a whole bunch of titles and he presented it to his team. It was a publishing company. And then based on those titles, the team then would write a book. And so it sounds like you came up, basically you had this title idea or this one sentence idea and you developed an entire book based on that. I really believe strongly that those types of things can inspire us greatly. That's pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely. I recently went to an elementary school for an author visit, and I was kind of going over book basics with them. But I did a live writing exercise with them where we picked a genre. I let them choose between either comedy, fantasy, or mystery. And then I just had them give me a couple characters and then an initial problem that the main character tried to solve. And we went through it one sentence at a time, just building this story together off of, that small fraction of an idea of just
Mm.
a character and a problem. And they have a lot
Wow.
of fun with that.
Oh, that sounds like a blast. Yeah. There's something so great about being part of a writer's community, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I've found a lot of support.
I feel like writers in general are such generous people with their thoughts and their ideas and always willing to help a fellow writer out, And so the fact that we're talking about this kind of early on in your interview is just great because what it says is that you have figured out that tapping into community is so important to stay motivated in writing. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It can feel very lonely when it's just you and your computer. So without finding connection of people to share with who have been on your path, I think that's when people tend to quit because they don't think that there's anybody involved. But when you have other writers and people giving you feedback, it starts to become more real and something that you can do because you see others doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that writing itself is a very lonely endeavor. It's not I don't know, you're not necessarily working side by side with somebody all day long. It's you and your thoughts and that keyboard. That is it.
Mhm.
And so it can be very lonely. And sometimes, I know for me, I don't know if it's the same for every author, but for me, I wanted feedback. It can be really scary to share your thoughts and your work with somebody else because you don't know if that feedback is going to be negative or how it's going to be received. But I wanted that. I wanted somebody to look at it and tell me that I was on the right track, that I was doing
Right.
okay. And my first few books, I did not have that. I didn't get that. It wasn't until later that I realized I really needed to find somebody to go on this journey with me and started to connect with writing groups and things of that nature. And I just can't say enough about that. I think every writer needs to be a part of something, whether it's a Facebook group and you meet people in there that you can connect with, or if you're fortunate enough to live somewhere that has writers clubs or writers groups, for sure, connect with other people, get some ideas from them. And it also gives you an opportunity to inspire them, not just be inspired.
Yeah.
So,
I-
all right, so Lightkeeper.
mhm.
And you already have the second one out, right? The sequel to that
Yes.
is out. Are you writing some more?
Yeah, book three comes out this July. It's with my developmental editor right now, and I just got the final ebook cover back from my cover designer. So I'm really excited about that. I'm should be putting out the release date for it next month because I have to get all my editing set up. It kind of depends on the uh, feedback I get from the developmental edit to see how long that may or may not take. Uh, but I have 6 books planned for the series, so I'm really excited about the direction it's going.
That is so cool. Talk to us about your writing process. Are you somebody who I have a friend who likes to go to a coffee shop to write, and I don't. I know some people. We interviewed an author a few months ago who likes to go for walks and dictate into his phone while he's walking, and that's how he writes his books. Everybody's process is a little bit different. What is yours like?
So for me, it's probably one of the more boring processes, but I cannot have outside influences. I need a quiet space with absolutely nothing to distract me. I can't have music going on. It's bad enough that my husband also works from home and I can hear him laughing and listening to videos in
No.
his office, even with my door shut. But I need that silence to be alone with my thoughts so I can hear the characters in the direction that the story is going. I tend to see the scenes as movies in my mind, and I'm just trying to get that all down. I do get a lot of inspiration listening to music in the car, though. It kind of almost works out like music videos, and I'll hear the song, and all of a sudden I'll see my characters doing things. I'm like, gotta get that in there. Um, but I am more of what they call a pantser or a discovery writer, so I don't have a an outline that I follow, just an idea that I'm always writing towards.
Yeah, yeah. And so when you do sit down to write, you just sort of regurgitate what's in your head. I relate to everything you just said 100% because I don't. my daughter is very auditory, and so she could have music playing and all sorts of stuff going on, and she would be able to just write. I can't do that. That is incredibly distracting. It almost feels invasive, like my thoughts are, not able to come out because I have all this other stuff being entered into my brain. But like you, I see things in a movie form. I'm very visual. My thought process is extremely visual. And so I see it and then I'm trying to describe it. And in order to do that, I cannot be interrupted.
Yes.
I hate to be interrupted once I get into the flow of writing. I'm a
Absolutely.
I regurgitate. I don't come up with outlines. And I don't know. Tell me this. I never start a book without the ending in mind. Do you do that?
Mhm. I generally have like a brief idea of how I want it to end. I came up with a writing prompt for myself a couple months ago that I'm probably going to write for Nano this November, and I had the concept just based off of tropes. And I was like, but how would it end? And I was like, it's like trying to get nailed down how that happy ending would work. Because if it's a romance, that's a requirement. They have a happy ending, otherwise
Mhm.
you're gonna upset the readers. So I was before when I was writing my little one paragraph summary of what this book would be about, I wanted to make sure that I nailed the ending. For Lightkeeper, it was easy. Obviously, you release a bad fairy, the ending is kept stopping the bad fairy. But how I got there was all over the place
Yeah.
initially.
I hear that. I hear that. So the two things I start with personally are the title and the ending. Yeah. So everybody's different. Some people just have a general idea, an overall idea. Some people have it plotted down to the nth degree and before they even put pen to paper. And that's not me. So it sounds like
No.
it's not you either. All right. So you write the book,
Mhm.
you finally get it done. And then you decide that you're going to self-publish the book. We're going to come back and find out about that process in just a moment, but I want us to take a break and hear from our sponsor for this program, for this channel, Victory Vision Publishing. So we'll be back in about a minute. Hey everyone, are you stuck trying to figure out how to finish writing or publishing your book? Well, let me tell you about Victory Vision Publishing. Victory Vision Publishing is there to help you cross that finish line. They have package plans that are tailor-made just for your individual needs. They have learning opportunities where you can discover ways of overcoming some obstacles that you might have. Adam Fleming is a wonderful CEO, and they are a fully staffed team just waiting to help you edit, layout, maybe make a cover for your book. Go ahead and join their email list and check out some of the wonderful books and wonderful authors that they have already helped get published. Yep, Victory Vision is definitely the way to go if you feel stuck and just want some support in getting your book out to the world. You're only one book away from changing the world. victoryvision.org. All right, we are back. We've been talking to Christina Wallace. And Christina, I think where we left off was that we wanted to hear about the process of you actually getting your book published. What was that process like for you?
So for me, it was kind of like a sink or swim moment. I had a publisher initially, and right before my book was due to be released, they suddenly had to go out of business. And I was in this predicament of either I could release my book myself or I could go back into the query trenches and hope somebody else wanted to pick it up again. And I was so close to having it realized. I was like, I will figure this out myself. So I kind of talked to some other writers about the things that needed to happen to make sure that the book was as professionally done as possible. So for me, it's like making sure the editing is done, that I had a professional level cover that's going to be eye catching, and trying to find a way to connect with other authors and influencer stuff to make sure that they can share my book so it doesn't just go under the radar without anybody knowing that it exists.
Right, right, right. That's it. I love what you said. I mean, I'm so sorry that the publishing company went out of business. I can't imagine how traumatic of an experience that was for you, especially at the last minute. But You know, I just love this idea that you said you didn't want to send your book back into the query and go through that process again. I'm a huge advocate for self-publishing because we no longer live in a day and age. I think I say this almost every episode that I do. We no longer live in a day and age where people have to ask permission to write a book or to be published. And it's a beautiful thing, I think. And it gives each individual author some control over that book. Now, the downside to that is you are 100% responsible for all of your marketing as well. But there's a misconception out there that people believe that they send their book off to a publisher and they don't have to do the marketing after that. They just sit back and collect royalty checks. And that's not true. Even when you go through quote unquote traditional publishing, you still have to do some marketing on your own in order to get that book out there. So my thought is, what would be the benefit then? This is why I push self-publishing. You may as well just go ahead and do it on your own and keep all of the royalties for yourself. Now, having said that, there is a lot of work that comes along with self-publishing. But when you were done with that, when you figured out how to get your book on Amazon, and there's a stiff learning curve to that, I really there are so many how-to videos on YouTube now on how to get your book published on Amazon or how to get your book in Barnes and Noble, all of those things. But there's a huge learning curve to all of that. Even when you watch the videos, that these how-to tutorials, you watch them. If you're like me, I was like, put it on pause, go back over to KDP, try again, do all of these things to follow their step. But once I did it, wow, I knew I could do it again. And what was that like for you? Were you proud of yourself? You had a lot to be proud of.
I really was. I had commented on a post on Threads earlier because somebody was saying that they had just submitted to get their author copy. And I remember when I received my very first author copy proof, there was like physical evidence that I had done all the steps that were required of me and my book is real.
It's
I was like, and
real.
how can you not cry holding something that you've spent, hours and months writing and then trying to finalize it and putting everything online. It doesn't feel real until you're holding it, but when you do, you're like, it is real.
I totally, it's like somebody had described it once. It's like giving birth to a child, right? So is your baby. It's your writing baby. Obviously, I don't want to say it's exactly the same thing. My children are a lot more important than my books, but really, there's nothing else that compares to that moment of surrealness where you're holding that thing that you created. And it's such a feeling. I want so many other people to have that feeling. I really do. We're gonna show your book real quick to our audience because I want them to see what we are talking about. So let's go on over to, okay, well, Christina, let's go on over to you so people can see all of your books and I'll have you talk about each one of these. So your first book, The Light Keeper, is right here. Am I correct? This was your first
Yes.
book?
Yes.
Okay. And then A Not So Simple Quest. Talk to us about that one for a minute.
So that is a young adult fantasy romance. There's zero spice level in it. It's about a girl who's lived in a castle her entire life as a sorcery apprentice, but because she is an elf orc halfling, it's not believed that it's safe for her to be out in the world because her kind, they don't appreciate half breeds. Uh, but when she accidentally lets a prisoner escape, she embarks on this quest to retrieve an item that he had stolen and try to redeem herself in the sorceress's eyes. And she learns that she is so much more capable than she has been led to believe. And it's just about her discovering herself, but also she meets a handsome knight along the way who decides that he's coming on this quest with her, whether she wants him to or not.
Oh
And they find
boy.
that they make an amazing team together and they face a lot of dangers. And he protects her, she heals his wounds. And uh, by the end of it, she's debating on if she should bother going back to this castle that's kind of been like a prison to her whole life, or if she believes it's worth the risk to try something new and to follow her heart.
Oh my goodness. Wow, you put a lot of thought into this book. That is great. And it just it sounds like something my grandchildren would like to read. And they're all in that upper middle school age range.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely something I would get for them. So let's go take a look at some of your other ones here. Let's take a look at The Light Keeper. You did tell us a little bit about this and how you came up with the idea for this, but tell us about the story just a little bit more.
So
Don't give any
I,
spoilers away.
yeah, Isaac is tasked with cleaning the attic in hopes of earning a video game that he wants that all of his friends have, and so he's feeling behind the curve. But he finds this weird chest with a lock on it, and he can't find the key anywhere, but he can't figure out why, of all things in this attic, that this one box would be locked. And so he eventually finds the key, and inside are just these balls of glass that have names carved on them. But he's like, who would lock this up? But he fumbles it trying to put it away, and the ball breaks, and fog coats the room, and this figure appears and asks, do you know my name? He
Oh,
guesses that it was the word that was on the ball before it broke, and this fairy offers to do any three tasks that Isaac desires in exchange for his release. After Isaac does issue these tasks, he realizes that all those balls are also trapped fairies who will also all do any three tasks that he desires. And so he thinks that he has got it made. And he just starts releasing these fairies about as quick as he can for things like doing his homework, doing his chores, getting him snacks from down the road. And he's 12. He's just living his best life. Uh, but meanwhile, all these weird pranks and stuff start happening in town. Things like the fire alarm getting pulled, or it's suddenly snowing in the early weeks of September. And eventually he realizes the fairies are to blame. And it's not until later he finally learns that he's from the lineage of people called light keepers who have the responsibility of trapping fairies who cause harm to humans, and that the
wow.
fairies he released were all prisoners. And so he has to figure out how to stop these fairies that he let go before they tear open the veil between the human and fairy worlds.
Oh my goodness. I can see this as a movie. You're telling the story, and I'm thinking of, I can just see it as a movie. I really can. You've painted a wonderful picture of this. Who knows? Maybe it'll be a movie one day. That would be fantastic. And so
It's
then the
certainly a
second
dream of
one,
mine.
the sequel, the second one is just a continuation, I imagine, of this story.
Yes.
I'm afraid I
So
don't want you to give away any spoilers. So I'm afraid to have you tell too much.
yeah, Isaac has a guardian. Her name is Yara. And at the end of book one, she mentions that she's trying to find the fairy prince Terrace. So book two kind of picks up with them uh, going to London in search of this missing fairy prince. But Yara is kidnapped and taken to the fairy world. So this book is told in dual POV because Isaac goes to the fairy world also to rescue her. But meanwhile, she's telling it from her side, where she's trying to find her own way home because she can't expect that Isaac would be stupid enough to go to the fairy world where it's very dangerous for a human. And so
Oh
it's
my.
just going back and forth between them and all the dangers that he is facing on his quest to save her, and her efforts in trying to just get home.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I see more than just a movie. I see a mini series coming out of this. This is fantastic, Christina. This is just
Thank you.
fantastic. I love it. All right. Well, listen, we're going to leave the link to all of your books in the description of this video. So if you would like to get one of Christina's books, for sure, you'll want to head down to the descriptions in the comments or in the description section, and you'll want to click on that link and go over to Amazon and get that. That is so awesome. Christina, because I know that it's such a painstaking, it's just a laborious act when you go about getting your own book published. I was wondering if you could give our audience maybe 3 tips for, especially if they're a new author, first time author,
Mm-hmm.
3 tips that would help them in trying to self-publish. Anything that you would share with them?
First and foremost, I would say not to scrimp on editing and editors. There's a lot of misconceptions that indie books are poorly made, and that's why we couldn't get a publishing company to back our books. And it's just not true.
No, it's not.
But having solid editing is something that is going to give you more trust with your readers. For the Lightkeeper, I began with a developmental edit, and I had it with the second book as well. And I have found that so helpful because they help you to think of things differently than you might see, that you might not know something is a plot hole, or that you had an emotional moment that you really missed that you could have capitalized on. And so I found that to be very valuable, but especially getting the line editors and the proofreading is so important to get those little details, because even though I had developmental edits and line edits and proofreading and several beta readers, and I still have little things that slip through. And so if I didn't have those eyes at all, I can only imagine the mistakes that would have made it through,
Yes.
because our brains just kind of fill in what we want to see that we don't realize that there are mistakes.
Absolutely. Oh, you just said so much in that. I always say, get some other eyeballs on that. Get somebody else to do your proofreading and your editing, and preferably somebody who is non-biased, not your grandmother who thinks everything you do is cool,
Yeah.
but somebody who's going to be honest. Now, I'm not talking about somebody who's going to rip your work apart. You don't have to do that. But I love that you said that there is this misconception that indie authors are people who couldn't get published any other way, and that is not true. This isn't the 1800s, people. This is a completely different era that we live in, and there are tools for indie authors to, in my opinion, actually surpass maybe even what some of the publishing companies are putting out there, because there's a lot more passion involved. But that's a whole nother subject. But it's not true. It isn't. I think that there is some quality work that can be done even if you do self-publishing. So I love that. What is your second tip for somebody?
To invest in a quality cover, because the cover is the very first thing beyond your title that people are going to see. And we hear the old adage, don't judge a book by a cover, but we know absolutely everybody does. if
Yes.
if something, it looks misaligned or looks out of place for the genre, it's going to turn people away, and they won't even read your blurb to see if they might like it. um, but getting a good cover doesn't have to cost hundreds or thousands of dollars. There are so many websites now that can they work with stock photos and stuff, but turn it around to make it look very unique and capture the audience that you're trying to get. Because things like, as much as the font and the positioning of the people can tell a whole different thing that you want your cover to convey. I am not a designer, so my ability to come up with something that I think would be really cool, I find most of the time is not anything that is truly eye catching. But um, for even get covers, those covers start at $25, and Mibel Art does things for like $75 to $100, depending on what you have. But for that little bit of an investment to have such a higher quality cover than what I can throw together on Canva is definitely worth it to me.
Yes, for sure, for sure. I think covers say a lot. And though I love that you're talking about this, because everything that you've mentioned so far were mistakes that I made all along the way, because I didn't have people in my life telling me that these were mistakes. Like, I didn't know. I was trying to figure all of this out on myself, which is the whole reason why I believe community is so important. That you have somebody who's telling you, you need a better cover, and I had mistakes in my first book. I was probably one of those people who gave indie authors a black eye, but I get better. The more that I do it, the better I get. So I'm proud of that. Okay, number 3, what would you tell somebody?
Building connections with other authors in your genre. It's something that I'm still working on myself, but it's important to have people who can hype you up and share you with people that you don't know. And so going through on Instagram or on threads and commenting on people and building genuine connections with them is going to help you in the long run, because they'll be able to share you in their newsletters, and you'll be able to do the same for them as you build up your interest of readers and stuff. And it cannot be replaced to have people to share you. That word of mouth often spreads better than any advertising will.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. So you said to make sure that you connect with people in your genre. How important is it that you connect with writers that are in your specific genre rather than just authors in general?
The benefit of having them be in your specific genre is that you guys are going to likely have similar reader bases. And so when they suggest your book, like if I have somebody who writes high fantasy, like Lord of the Rings type stuff, and they're like, hey, check out this urban fantasy, their readers, I'm like, that's not really what I'm interested in. Whereas if I have people who write more along the lines of the Percy Jackson Harry Potter series, their demographic is the same as mine. And so their recommendation of my book is going to hold a lot more weight.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. That really does. Yeah. Oh, I love that. All right. Well, listen, what we are going to do one more time, because I really, really, really want the audience to go check these books out. I think these are going to be great for my grandkids. I want to share this again. If you're looking at this, what you are seeing is, I'm just going to pull up your sequel here, The Lightkeeper and the Other World. This is your latest book. And so if you are looking for a really good book for your older middle school child, or even yourself, like I like to read in that age range. I really do, because I think sometimes I think it's more entertaining. If you're looking for a good book, I would recommend that you go over here to Christina Wallace's book, The Lightkeeper series, and check her out, see what she has. You'll definitely want to get that for yourself or your children. So, yeah. Christina, it has been so much fun having you here. I love your personality and your countenance, and I love the ideas of what you have written. I haven't read them yet, but I would absolutely like to. Um, Before we go today, can you give us just one thing that you want the audience to know about yourself and about writing?
And that's writing, I think, is just a part of who I am. And if I didn't do it, I think I would be very sad. Like for me, it's how I get my views of the world out is by putting it down on paper, and holding that in is not good for me. And so I would say that if other people feel the same, that they have a story to tell, that even if they don't dream of publishing, it's important just to get it down on paper and let those feelings out.
I was going to let you go, but you just said something that makes me want to ask you another question. Before you wrote these books, you said you were the writer, like people came to you and said, "Oh, Christina will do it. Christina will write it." Did you journal?
I wrote a lot of very angsty teenage poems and stuff, but I was really into writing fan fiction and whatnot in high school. I just filled my notebooks with any thoughts that I had. But things that I wrote for myself was my sad poetry, and then I would write some letters to myself on occasion. But mostly, I'd like to live in other worlds.
Okay. Pardon me. Well, I just wondered if, you're talking about writing and just that you are a writer and that is inside of you and all of that. So I just wondered if maybe you were the kind of person who processes their thoughts through writing. I know some people do that. They heal through journaling. They kind of get a better perspective on the world just through their writing, things like that.
Mhm.
So that's kind of what I was curious about. But, well, Christina, it's been fun. I have enjoyed having you, and I wish you all of the success in the world. I just hope and pray that lots of people flock to your book and get it, because I see a movie in my head out of your book for sure. So, all right. Well, you have been watching and listening to a book. We've spoken to Christina Wallace today. She is a fantastic author, and I highly recommend that you go check out her books. I thank you so much for spending your time with us. As always, have a great day and God bless.